Hey everybody, this video is the first in a series I'm doing on in-depth looks at different punk rock guitar lead techniques. And so the first one I'm doing today is unison bends. Now this is a technique that's used in a lot of punk music, but it's also used in a lot of rock and blues. But I'm going to be looking at it kind of in a way that it's primarily used in punk. For equipment, I'm using the Rat distortion pedal and my Fender Twin Reverb 65 reissue amp. The links for those items will be in the description. And remember to check out my website, scottobryanguitar.com. I have the tabs for hundreds of punk rock and grunge songs up there. And here we go. All right, so a unison bend is basically taking two different notes on adjacent strings and bending one of them up to match the note on the higher string. So for example, if we play with our index finger at the 5th fret of the B string, that note is an E. And then we play our ring finger at the 7th fret of the G string. That note is a D. We're gonna play both notes. It sounds kind of rough right now, but we're gonna bend that lower string, that G string, up with our ring finger to match the note that's being played with our index finger. So if we bend it up slowly, we get a kind of interesting sound. It's kind of discordant to start and then it matches up with the note. Or we can do it quickly to get a different kind of effect. And the motion really is, it's not pushing with your fingers. It's like a rotation. So when you're doing any type of bend, you want to anchor your hand on the bottom edge of the neck and kind of rotate into it. It's not pushing, it's rotating. And to get an even firmer grip, I like to wrap my thumb around the neck. It's going to give you more control. And so for the unison bend, instead of rotating around the bottom edge of the neck, we're going to rotate around this finger. This is going to be kind of our rotation point. But we're also going to have like the inside of our hand kind of resting on that neck. And so we're going to play both notes. And we're going to do that little bit of rotation until we hit the proper pitch. And also another trick to pull these off and to get more control is to use your middle finger to help you push. It's going to give you a lot more control. And I know for new guitar players, this can be really tricky to kind of get that pitch. Kind of an easy hack to do this with while you're ear training is to plug into your tuner and just bend that note until you hit the pitch you're supposed to be at. For this example, it's an E. It's going to help you get the ear for the proper pitch as well as train your fingers to know how far to bend to get to the right spot. And so if we're using this technique bending to a note that's rooted on the B string, so for example, 5th fret of the B string is an E. So if we're bending up to that, we're going to go 2 frets down on the G string and bend from there. So bend from the 7th fret. But if we want to do this technique bending up to a note that's rooted on the high E string, like for example here with the A, we need to actually go up 3 frets on the B string. So we need to go 1, 2, 3 here on the B string to bend up. And that can be really tricky with your ring finger. It's quite a stretch. So I prefer to actually do it with my pinky finger. And I'm going to use these other 2 fingers to help me push. And now again, a lot of new guitar players have trouble using their pinky finger for a lot of things. I feel like as far as like using your pinky finger, this is one of the easier techniques to do because you have your other fingers to kind of help back it up. But if you have trouble with that, you can use your ring finger. For me, will depend on the position on the fretboard too. If I'm down here where the frets are farther apart spaced, I might use my pinky more often. Whereas up here, I'm definitely gonna be using my ring finger. Something you're gonna have to feel out for yourself. And then another tip to prevent catching a lot of other strings when you're bending, like you don't want to catch those other strings, is to kind of hook your fingers a little bit more. So you want to have like kind of a curl on your fingers. And that's going to allow you to go up without catching those strings. If your fingers are flat, you're going to kind of catch them under the tips of your fingers. You want to try and have as much curl on your fingers as you can and then rotate. So a lot of times in punk music or even in rock music, you'll hear like a series of these bends. It sounds like something like that. And so now that we know the technique, you're probably asking yourself, well, how do I know what position to play? There's a couple different ways to do this. So the easiest way to know where to play these, You don't have to know any scales. You don't have to know what key the song is in. You just have to know the chords that you're playing. So for example, let's say we have a chord progression that goes like this. So we have G, A, C, D. So we can bend to the note that each chord is rooted on over that chord. So our chord progression starts with a G. Now if we go to the 3rd fret of the high E, that's a G, and we can bend up to the G. So we can go G, and then if we go A, we can go to the 5th fret of the high E, and then we go C, and then we go D. So we can do those bends over those chords. And so this is super easy to remember if you're playing a chord progression that is all on the low E string, because the 3rd fret of the low E string is a G, and 3rd fret of the high E string is a G, so you really don't even have to know the notes. If the chord's rooted on the low E, you can play a bend that bends up to a note on the high E. But let's say your song has some chords on the low E string, so we'll go D, A, and this time instead of C, D, we'll go E to B. So G, A, so now we're going to need to do bends. We can start the same way. G, A, and then we have an E up here. So we can go high, and then back down to the B. So G, A, E, B. And so it's just a little bit more complicated. You just have to figure out the root notes of your chords and then where your corresponding notes are on the high E string. Or if you want, you can play it on the B string root too. You just have to figure out the notes. And so another way we can know where to play these bends is if we know the key of the song that we're playing in. So let's say the song is in the key of E, just to keep things simple. And the phrasing we want to use is the minor pentatonic scale. So if you don't know the minor pentatonic, that's fine. So on the B string, starting in the 5th position with an E, the minor pentatonic scale goes 5th fret, 8th fret, 10th fret, 12th fret, 15th fret, and then it starts over at an E again on the 17th fret. So we can play bends along that scale over any song in the key of E. So we can play any combination of bends along that scale in that song if it's in the key of E. We don't have to play it in order. We can play in reverse order. We can mix and match. A lot of times you'll find it kind of like as an emphasis, as like an ascending type thing. Like another easy way to remember this is that the minor pentatonic intervals go 3 frets from the root. So if we find our root, E, it goes 3 frets, 2 frets, 2 frets, 3 frets, 2 frets. And we're back to the start. So if you remember 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, you can remember how far you need to move from the root. And then you can do that with any root. So if your song's in the key of D, the D's here, we can go 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, and we're back to the root. But again, if you're new at guitar and this is all confusing to you, you can just stick with playing the bends over the corresponding chords that the rhythm guitar is playing. All right, so just to recap what we learned today, there are 2 different positions of bends that are commonly played in rock and punk music. We've got the one that's rooted at the B string and bends from the G string. And we've got the one that's rooted at the high E string and bends from the B string, and it's 1 fret higher. We want to use a rotating motion to do that bend, not just pushing forward with our fingers. We want to hook our fingers as much as we can so that we don't catch other strings. And we want to use the middle finger or sometimes the ring finger to help us push to get more control. And then these bends can be used over the corresponding chord. So if you're playing A, you can do an A bend over the top of that chord. And then if we're a little bit more sophisticated and we know the key that the song is in, we can use our minor pentatonic or a minor scale or a major scale, depending on the phrasing of the song, and play bends along the scale in the key of that song. So for example, in the key of E, we can do this. And we can either memorize the scale or we can know the intervals, the 3, 2, 2, 3, 2 for the minor pentatonic. So that's it for this one. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe. That way you get notified when I post new videos. I post new stuff like this very frequently. And check out my website, scottobryanguitar.com. I have the tab for hundreds of punk, rock, and grunge songs up there. And I'll see you guys next time.